I'm Andrew Brown, and I'm one of the co-founders and the CEO at Check. What we do at Check is we are the leading embedded payroll company. So we work with software platforms across the country to help them build and offer new payroll and products and services to the small businesses on their platforms.
So why is Check an awesome place to work? Like, what are you telling someone when you meet them or trying to attract them to your company?
Yeah, totally. I think people fundamentally with work, they want to have two things. They want to be able to have an impact, and they want to be able to work with other awesome people that are going to inspire them every day and make them better. And I think at Check, we bring kind of the best of both worlds there. So first of all, we're a team of about 100 people. That means we're big enough that, you know what to do. Like, we're past product market fit. Our customers are always asking us for more things, but also we're small enough that I can, every single person that joins, I know exactly the ways in which we're expecting them to really, change the trajectory of the business. And we empower you to do that. Like, we are in a business of where the more we can ship, the more that drives the business forward. And so it's a really powerful place, to be. And that builds on itself, right? You attract great people that way, and then they attract more great people.
As you grow, how do you maintain that speed and the strength of the culture? Obviously when it's 10 people, you're in the room with them potentially, or at least you're talking to them pretty closely. They have a lot of overlap with you as the founder. As they grow to 100 people, like maybe, people don't have that day-to-day interaction with you. Like, how does that scale, and how have you found that grow? I mean, how have you found it change from like 10 people to 100 people?
I think in so many ways we actually ship at a higher pace now than we did back when we were 10 people. And the reason for that is in this domain, an awful lot of your ability to ship comes down to how well you understand the problem that you are solving. There's this sort of old analogy, right, of an elephant, and you're kind of feeling the piece of it and you kind of don't know where you're at. I think oftentimes in these big old industries, that's how companies are built. We're far enough along now that we really know the payroll space cold. We know the things that we need to do. And so it's less guesswork and more, here's the thing we got to build, let's go do it. And then you define small teams, or any given team shipping something is less than 10 people. It's smaller than we were back then. And so really empower those teams.
When it comes to payroll, like it's massive, right? There's everybody gets paid, right? So everybody's running through payroll at some point. There's a ton of players, old players, new players and stuff. So what's interesting about what your platform offers? Why do you guys have a moat? Why are you guys going to win?
Yeah, totally. So I think the first key thing to understand is that we think payroll today is fundamentally broken. We think that the way that pretty much all the existing players are doing it is just wrong. And that's not because they're not smart or haven't built great companies. They absolutely have, but it's that the world is changing. And so historically, you went and signed up for a payroll company and any one of them, and they'd give you HR and all these other services. Today, most likely, you're signing up for kind of an all-in-one platform to power your business, whether that's something like a Square in the restaurant space or a Dripos, a customer of ours, if you're in a coffee shop. And you want that all-in-one platform to do everything for you, including payroll and including HR. And so that's where Check comes in. So it's a small business, like you can't come and sign up for our service. That's not what we do. We're really an infrastructure provider to these leading platforms who want to help solve the payroll needs of their customers. And that's the unique thing. That's the moat. We've had to rethink the entire industry from the ground up to build it in an API-oriented fashion to make our service possible.
And so are the companies that you're selling to, are they kind of providers of these all-in-one solutions, and are they kind of industry like specific, or how does that work?
Correct. Yeah. So they're the software platforms that are the providers of these all-in-one solutions. So, we're typically selling to other founders and entrepreneurs and engineers, which is another really fun part of the job. Like here, it's not only the other smart people on our team you're getting feedback from, it's the really smart people, at our partners that you're getting the feedback from as well.
So if I'm an engineer, like what are the main selling points you're pitching for me to kind of join your team? Like, is it the problem space, the actual working with the customers? Like, what are the top three here?
Yeah, 100%. I think first of all, it's have that huge impact. It is like you can actually change the trajectory of the business. Like you're not adding, a little additional button in the UI somewhere. Like you're rebuilding huge parts of the infrastructure of the way money is moved in this country and the way people get paid. So that's number one. I think number two is it's that close feedback loop with customers. People who really want to be rolling up their sleeves, getting in the weeds, getting that feedback. That's kind of the second piece I like to pitch. And third is it's really intensity. It's getting out of your comfort zone. One of our values is seek truth, not consensus. And that means like we're not afraid to challenge each other. We want great people who are going to come and tell each other that they're wrong and push and figure that out. And I think those are the things that really distinguish folks.
Can you describe your culture in like 3 words? Like what is kind of the top 3 things you think about when you think about the culture?
Yeah, the top 3 words that come to me for Czech in our culture are really about its intensity of pace. It's deeply caring about empowering our partners, and it's really nerding out about the details of the payroll industry. Like we're just in a space where you got to be in the weeds. If you do those 3 things, that leads to success.
So you guys had like 5 cultural traits on the website that I saw, and I always find that like they all matter, but there's probably some that matter more, right? So if you had to kind of stack rank your top 2 of the 5 that you had listed, like which are the 2 that like we're only going to take these, we have to get rid of everything else?
It's like you got to pick your favorite kids. This is
exactly.
a tough one. All right, I think my top 2, number 1 would probably be think big, work small. So what I mean by that is for us, like taking me as an example, occasionally I still ship code. I still answer support tickets. I'll help implement customers. There's no job too small for anyone in the company to do. I think it's actually by doing that work that you learn how to be really great at designing, the bigger picture solution. So that's probably the first one I'd pick. And the second attribute I would pick is really that be a true partner mentality. Like you got to bring a service-oriented mindset here, not in a technical way, but in a, like, we are here to help our partners, like full stop. If you don't want to do that, like don't come be here.
One of the things that we've seen across companies is uniqueness in culture helps, differentiate them compared to everywhere else. How do you guys think about the uniqueness in your culture? Like what's kind of different joining Czech and being a person at Czech, be an engineer, salesperson, or whatever, compared to the 20 other startups and FANG companies and whatever they can work for?
Yeah, totally. I think the number one thing is you are just expected to do and own a lot more. And what I mean by that is certainly not just relative to other bigger companies, and we hear that consistently from people that join, but even smaller ones too. Like you are going to be a load-bearing member of the team, full stop. Like there's no one, kind of on the team who isn't. And that can be a stressful place to be, but I think it's a really exciting place to be too, because it means you are going to have an impact. That is just the number one factor for us.
I love the term load-bearing team member. It's like very like it's visual and stuff too. Where does that come from? Like, a lot of ways I think companies are a reflection of their founders, their leadership, the CEO. So this idea of being a load-bearing team member, is that something from you? Is that something from your experience? Like, why did you guys decide to make that part of like an integral part of the culture?
I think it's been a process over time. I think in the early days, of course, that's what you want, right? When you only have 2, 3, 4, or 5 people, like everyone has to be. But I think most companies lose that as they scale. You hope for it, but then you don't hold the bar high enough. You don't, let go of the bad apples that you need to. And so you just end up in a culture that's sort of consistently watered down over time. That is the thing that over the last 2 or 3 years, I think we fought really, really hard against and have been quite successful in doing so. And especially, over the last several years in the fundraising environment that we're all in, it's more and more important for that to be true. And so I think that's been the key thing for us.
Did you wake up at some point and then you were like, oh crap, we got to course correct? Or was this something that you saw creeping and you made sure that it didn't go too far in a direction that you weren't excited about?
It was creeping and gradual over time. Yeah, it's been a process. Makes
sense. I saw on your site you guys hire remotely. I know kind of the current regime change is now everybody's going back to the office. A lot of the startups that we work with have kind of changed their mind and are trying to do that. Why are you guys saying remote? Like, was this a thoughtful process, or how did you guys come to the conclusion that this still works for you?
Yeah. So I think at Czech, we believe in 2 things. We believe in great people, and we believe in the importance of bringing them together from time to time in person. I think what people lose is they kind of go entirely in one direction or the other. Personally, I think it's really hard to just hire a team of great people and never bring them together to build those shared bonds, build that culture, maybe have some of the harder conversations. I think flip side is people think that, hey, if we just get everybody in one room and they're there every day, that we'll be successful, and you lose. Well, what is the sort of implication of that for having great people? For us, we've really tried to strike a balance. So we have offices in New York and in San Francisco. Our folks who are in those offices or in those cities are there at least a couple days a week, in many cases, especially here in New York, more than that. And pretty much everyone in the company is traveling at least quarterly to get together. And I think that's a core part of how we've made things work.
Do you guys have like, is it an offsite or are people coming to one of the offices or the whole company getting together somewhere else?
Yeah, so we've got a pretty good cadence now. So we do once a year, we do a full company offsite. 6 months, offset from that. We're typically doing big departments are doing offsites and bringing folks together. And then in the kind of the other 2 off quarters, it tends to be smaller, specific teams, things of that nature who are getting together. And sometimes people just travel to be at offices or go to conferences, see our customers, that type of thing as well.
How do you think about these offsites? I mean, we do the same thing. We have offsites, like we try to do them almost 2 or 3 times a year. We're fully remote, and it's kind of necessary, at least for us. But yep. When you think about these things, are they kind of heads down time where people kind of just working together? Is it like, social time? Is it like more presentation and brainstorming time? Like, how do you think about the structure of these offsites?
Yeah, it varies depending on the size of the group and exactly what the purpose is. The smaller the group, the more it's going to be sort of heads down working together. And that doesn't mean there's no content, but it's more like tactically, like, what do we do? I get our leadership team together every single quarter. Maybe we do a presentation or 2, but it's mostly like, we're going to sit here for 12 hours and, work through the hardest problems in our business and figure out what's going on. And for our full company offsite, we try and have a little more fun with it. So we take people to Mexico, we go to the beach a little bit, I'll do a sort of state of the union, what's going on in the business, but it's a little more relaxed.
So going back to the previous question where you were talking about your culture of seeking truth. So how do you do that without like keeping respect and not making sure that people get upset? Like, is it just selecting people that can handle it? Is it like teaching them that this is what's expected? Like, how do you kind of maintain that culture of seeking truth versus seeking consensus and happiness, basically?
I think you said it well with expectations. I think that is the key thing. I think sometimes people come in and their expectation is work is going to be a place where everything's sort of, no one disagrees, I'm not really challenged. And when you take a step back and look at every other area of your life, that's just not the way life works. If you've ever been part of a family or part of a long-term relationship, like, you argue with those people. They're not always right, like there is conflict. And I think actually setting the expectation that is what happens when you bring human beings together. And when you root it in a sense of mutual respect and admiration and caring for each other, that actually raises the level at which you can disagree and be really direct, as compared to vice versa. And it's almost like a form of caring and investment in one another to do that, to kind of take the time to push each other. And so it's a constant reinforcement of that attitude.
How do you think about selecting talent? When you're going out and finding talent, are there specific things that you're looking for when it comes to engineers or anybody at the company, like specific traits that you're like, oh yeah, we must have that and we test for it type of thing?
Yeah, 100%. And I will also just preface this by saying I think interviews are borderline useless. Like, it's so hard to get good signal for them. But what we're trying to look for, what we're trying to find is folks who are high agency people. Folks who, wherever they've been, they've had success and actually change the direction or pace of travel, of that business. And obviously want them to come in and do the same again here. So, high agency, high work ethic, really positive minded. We're entrepreneurs, we're optimistic, like we're trying to do new things. Like, you want people who are going to push that forward. And obviously you got to be competent in your domain as well. I think those are the key things we look for.
So if interviews are borderline useless, how are you guys testing for this stuff? Like, how are you finding it?
Yeah, I mean, you do it in a few ways. You do the interviews, and in particular, you try and have people do the actual work, right? That's one big thing. I think second is you got to do references, and especially back channel references. That's the other piece of it. And then I think the final piece is you just got to recognize that you're not always going to get it right. And so when folks join, it's like, okay, here's our expectations, here are yours. Like, let's see how this works, over the first, 3 months, 6 months, and kind of make a call at that point.
Yeah, you don't want a zero defect process is kind of what I've heard too. It's just like if you're hiring perfectly, you're not actually, you're missing out a lot, basically.
Yeah, I would go further. I think that's just like a myth. I just don't think you can hire perfectly. I think if you think you have zero defects, you just aren't critically enough examining your own team.
That's fair. Have you guys made any changes in the process since you started it based off of what you've learned? Like, did you change things in the interview? Did you try work trials? Or like, how has kind of your process of talent selection evolved as the company's gotten bigger?
Yeah, it's definitely evolved quite a bit over time. I think leaning more and more into those, work samples, work product has been a huge part of it. I think getting more specific about how we evaluate for our values, less, hey, just like, maybe give me an example of something, and more like really pushing on, okay, how did that work? And frankly, like scaling good interviewers, has been another part of it. Maybe not changing the process, but ensuring the process is applied consistently. Those have been some of the biggest areas of change.
When a candidate applies, like how can they stand out for your process? Like how can they have the best shot at joining the company if they're super excited?
Yeah, I think this is something that probably for most candidates is so easy to do, and they really miss it. It's kind of like proof of work. A lot of people show up and they're like, hey, this is me, like I'm going to answer your questions, which is fine. I'm not saying you can't be successful that way, but to really stand out, like put in the work. So show up and, start with like, send me an email to apply and explain why you love Check and love what we're doing and how the impact that you want to have here. Like not very many people do that. Then, when you're interviewing with another engineer or PM or whatever the role might be, like come with your 5 ideas from what you saw, listening to our podcast or looking on our website for what you can do, and with interesting, provocative, questions about what our strategy is going to be. It's that kind of stuff that, makes you really stand out from the crowd.
Awesome. Well, thank you for the extra time, Andrew.
It's been fun. I haven't really done one like this before, plenty of podcasts, but mostly it's about the business, less so about hiring. So, appreciate you guys taking the time.